Hello and welcome to the Promise Saunders Show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min Podcast Network. I'm Scott Saunders, joined by Rob Blanchette, as ever, talking about Manchester United, who dropped some points in the Premier League against Southampton on Sunday. They now don't play a Premier League game, I don't believe, until April, where they go to Newcastle. But there are two games upcoming before the international break. A second leg against Real Betis and Fulham at home in the FA Cup quarterfinals this weekend coming. Rob, how are you doing?
Not bad. A little bit flat, obviously, after that goalless draw at Old Trafford. We're going to try and break down some of it today and talk about some of the players involved. But overall, I don't know. I think we kind of need the Premier League to carry on, don't we, Scott? We need to kind of get the momentum back from where we were a few weeks ago. So I think the international break might help United in some ways because of injuries and one thing or another. But I'm never a big fan of the international break.
Yeah, I think some clubs perhaps need the Premier League to continue more than others. I would say United, this might be coming at a good time for them. The fact that they don't have, obviously, they have two games coming up, but they're not in the league. And they do have a number of injuries that we'd like to see cleared up. But they will be without one player, regardless. And we'll talk about him. I'm sure you can guess who that will be. I'm sure you've probably clicked the video and his name is in the title somewhere. We'll talk about that today. But you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your pods, Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes, and we'll be around twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, also on YouTube. Like, subscribe, join the community, leave a comment for us over there on that channel. And you can follow us on Twitter at _Scott Saunders, at _Rob_B, and at Promise and MU for the show as well. Today, we will be talking about Casemiro and his... He's now missed 8. He'll now miss 8 Premier League games because he's had one red card and a 3-match ban. He then had a accumulation of yellow cards ban, and now he's got a 4-match ban for another straight red card, which I suppose first, Rob, the question is, was it a red card? We both agree that it was.
Yes. Yes, I think it's a red card because, again, with my position in the stands, it was literally right in front of us. Like, it could not have been any kind of more clearer in our sight where we were. Probably got a better look than the referee, who was the other side of the play. But it's right in front of us. And I think as soon as you leave your feet, in that manner, where you kind of jump into a tackle, it wasn't your classic 2 foot going in together. But once you're off the ground, the law says that you are out of control of your body. And the next bit is you have to make sure you don't make that impact. And he kind of went over the ball. People said, oh, he got the ball. He didn't get the ball. He touched the ball. He did, yes. But he didn't divert the ball away. He touches the ball and then very much touches the opposition player through his shin bone. So I think once that happens, and with the VAR rules as they are and as the law is, it's a red card, unfortunately. I think in a pre-VAR, that's a yellow card. I think the referee can't see it from the opposite side, but as soon as he sees it on a monitor, it's a bona fide red.
I think the issue is, as Eric Ten Hag brought up, that is a red card for me. Casemiro probably knew it as well. You could see on his face that he was like, oh no, I'm going to miss more games.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just the issue is not related to United, really. The Fabinho tackle at Brighton from a few weeks ago, which was worse, probably. Than this. There was cases at Leicester versus Chelsea of bad tackles, which went unpunished the day before. If United are going to lose one player, other teams around them should probably be treated the same way. And it's just a consistency, right?
It is a consistency issue with VAR, and it's a consistency issue with English refereeing. It has been for a long time, isn't it? So, I've talked a lot about how the PGMOL, who obviously run our referees association here in the Premier League, for the longest with VAR, they've tried to create their own bar that is not the same bar as other countries. And what do you see? Other countries seem to use VAR quite effectively, and it seems to be comfortable and has now been integrated into their systems more. Whereas in this country, we're still talking about VAR issues and one thing or another. You're right about that. I think it's about when you look at the tackles. So I think the one on João Felix the other day is a really interesting one because there are little nuances, Scott, which still need to be highlighted that are different. So you going in with your studs and your foot up is not what the rule says. It's about out of control and what's dangerous. So if you're coming in at a different angle, like the João Felix one, where he flicks his foot up, he definitely hits him pretty hard and it is dangerous. But then you have to decide quickly whether it's yellow or red. That's the decision. And obviously they didn't give anything in the end. With the Casemiro one, he's coming in at a kind of direct angle. So part of the law says that about where your point of entry. And he kind of comes in pretty straight from the side and hits him flush on the shin bone. So that's why it's a red. So a lot of these, sometimes I know fans get upset and they go, oh, but it didn't happen there last week and it didn't happen there. There are tiny differences and you've got different referees who look at it differently. But we need the PGMOL to clear this up about the interpretation of the rules. What we really need, Scott, is the rules to be rewritten. The rules need to be a little bit flatter and a bit clearer and give the impetus to VAR to make those choices. I haven't really got a problem with the red card, not overall. Right in front of me, I was worried straight away. When he gave him the yellow, me and my son were stood there. My son went, they're going to upgrade that to red, aren't they? And I went, probably. So we stood there for a minute while it all happened and he walked to the monitor and we were like, well, we saw it. So it's probably going to be a red. And the crowd obviously went mad. But yeah, a huge blow for Man United, a hammer blow as I described it. I think when you lose Casemiro, you lose more than one player, don't you? He's such an integral part of Ten Hag's system. And there's no one else who can play the number 6 like he can.
The referee criticism debate, which rolls around every single week, absolutely does my head in. So it's killing me to have to talk about this. But the only other thing I wanted to mention, I was more bothered about the lack of a penalty award than the red card.
Yeah.
I know, I understand the rules. Again, we're talking about rules needing to be rewritten. But I'm sorry, when you see like that Thomas Souček handball at Chelsea, that was probably worse than this one. But the guy is literally on all fours. He hits his arm and it stops it going to Weghorst. Like, I come on.
This again, this is again PGMOL directives, right? So the interpretation is supposed to be that if your hand is on the ground, or your hand is going to the ground, that you can't give a penalty. That's what the rule, that's their interpretation at the moment, their modern interpretation. Now, that doesn't mean it's the rule. It's not the rule. So you have to reinterpret that. So I agree with you. Like in real time, we saw it. And as he goes down, you can kind of see when that ball hits his arm that it's not a natural position. It isn't. Like you can't call it a natural position. So the current directive says that you can't give a penalty for it. So I get that, but it's wrong. That's the point. So like they need to look at these things and stop tweaking these things so much. Just make it very simple. I think if that hits your arm in that situation, the duty of care is still with the player to not put his arm in front of the ball. It really is. Pull your arm away and fall flat on your face, mate. You can't just say because you're falling on the floor that you're allowed to put your hand out. So yeah, there was that. The Rashford one again was right in front of us. Rashi goes through. And it was just the way that the goalkeeper slid out. It was like guilty by association, his face, because Rashford went down like a ton of bricks in front of us. And the goalkeeper went, and we were like, penalty, penalty, penalty all day long, screaming for it. And when you look at the replay, it doesn't look clear and obvious. But when you look at the still shot, it's knee to ankle. He catches him. It's a penalty. So United could have had 2 penalties.
Controversial opinion. I think they need to remove stills. I think they need to get rid of stills completely from the process. Well, everything look worse.
Well, the whole thing is that the still proves it's a penalty, but the video doesn't. Like I watched the video 20 times, and the video doesn't prove it. So you could say that all these decisions, Scott, should be made without slow motion replays. Maybe that's the way to go forward. Is that VAR looks at it? Is it clear and obvious in real time? Because as fans, we see that in the stadium. As journalists, we see it with our eyes, so we know what we're seeing. But it's up to a referee. It's difficult for a referee to see what we're seeing with an elevated position at ground level. So I do have some sympathies for referees, but what I don't have sympathy for is the directives coming from the PGMOL, because they make it complicated and then the next week they change their mind and tell the referees to do something different. And when we're like, well, what is the rule? What's the directive? So 2 penalties United probably should have had. I think the Bruno Fernandes one is debatable because he does get a clean look on the ball, but again, he kind of slides through him, and Bruno's looking for the penalty, looking for contact. It's debatable. Another week that's given us a penalty because of the way the point of entry comes from the back and the side. So it's one of those games. But I do think that Man United didn't win the game and drop points because of Man United and not because of Antony Taylor.
That is what I was gonna say next. And if you're watching this podcast and my head is in my hands, I hate talking about refereeing decisions. I absolutely hate it. It does my head in every single weekend. I would just prefer to look at the fact that United couldn't score against the team who were bottom of the league.
And that's why I was so pro VAR for many years, Scott. Like I wrote an article years ago.
I tried to move away from VAR.
Yeah. I wrote an article years ago called Techno Football, right? And what it was about how can you make the game better with technology, but not ruin the game. And we're kind of somewhere in the middle, aren't we? Still, I still think VAR has a big future in the game, but we're just using it wrong because the human beings are rubbish. So you've got to find a balance for the humans to be better and allow the technology to help you more. And I think that's kind of the bigger debate about VAR. But yes, we'll move away from that today because I don't think Manchester United drew that match because of VAR. I think they drew that match because of themselves.
10 minutes in, we will talk. We will talk about how United go about replacing Casemiro for the bulk of the show for the next section. We'll talk Jadon Sancho, Antony Martial, Christian Eriksen are both close. I think maybe there's a suggestion that Antony Martial and Christian Eriksen could be back for the next league game. Potentially, we don't know about Eriksen yet, but from what we've heard, he might be slightly ahead of schedule. And hopefully, if he doesn't go on international duty, he'll be back soon. Alejandro Garnacho, injury looks worse than first feared. That was a scissor tackle. Clean tackle. I don't want to eliminate those tackles from the game, but if it's here and there, and if you're going to do one, why not do the other? And anyway, we'll talk at the end about just a little bit of transfer speculation, and we'll leave you to guess the name until we get to it at the end. So the question here, without Casemiro, is how do United navigate their next 4 games in domestic competition in the Cup and in the league? It's Newcastle away, Brentford and Everton at home. Yeah, difficult games, but I think, if they had a full-strength team, that is at least 7 points you'd be expecting from those, but it makes it a lot more difficult. What do they do? Because Rob came into this show today wanting to say that this idea that he has about how they go about replacing Casemiro, and then I ended up beating him to it when we were talking before we started recording. So I'll leave it to you, Rob. What do you think we should do?
Yes, you stole my thunder before we started recording, didn't you?
Not on the podcast.
You said, I've got an idea, lads, and then you told us the idea, and I was like, that's my idea. I'm just about to say that, but it's good that we agree, isn't it? So I think, it's kind of a moot point to kind of say that Manchester United are worse without Casemiro. Yes, we know that. It's like the most obvious thing ever, isn't it? We've seen that with Casemiro's suspension so far this season, how difficult it is to replace his functionality in the team. Whether you just take his class out or whether you take his positional ability or his leadership, all of those things are huge elements for Ten Hag. But what can you do now in these games ahead? Unfortunately, Scott, I was just saying there, those games, yes, at full strength, you would expect to win them or get significant points, but they're kind of the gritty, horrible games where you know what the opponent's going to try and do. Like, they're going to try and match you pound for pound with the punching, aren't they? In the middle of the park, yeah, you might be more talented than us, but we don't care about that. We're going to go in hard and we're going to smash you and we're going to try and intimidate you. And unfortunately, Manchester United, I do think that their brain is not always in the right place in those kind of scenarios. You need a Casemiro to slow it all down and to look after the ball. So where do you go with this? Because you've got Scott McTominay, who can deputise as a defensive midfielder, but we all know he's not particularly a very good one. Fred has played the 6 at numerous times when he's had to play it. Again, I wouldn't say particularly a good one. Very rash in how he plays. Going back in time, when Casemiro was in and out and Casemiro wasn't there, Eriksen did play the deeper lying role and you played that 6 and it worked okay. You weren't massively exposed, but there were times where we were doing the show and saying that's difficult. He hasn't got the defensive capabilities. So where do you go? I think the one player I think that you've got, when you look at the whole of the back line, you look at the back 4, you look at those midfield positions, the one player I think that you can move out of position into that number 6 for these 4 key games, and they are key, you're at the end of the season, you need the points, is Lisandro Martinez. So I think with Martinez, we know that he's played defensive midfield before. He's played number 6 before for Ajax. We also know that Ten Hag's been quite outward in his dislike of how Martinez plays the number 6. He's kind of said, I don't believe he's a number 6. It's not kind of what I like him to do. Now, I think when you've got coverage in your back 4, with the likes of Maguire, Lindelof now coming back from illness and injury, you've got a fit Luke Shaw, a fit Malacia, you've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who I think looks really good when he's on a football pitch at the moment defensively, doing all the coverage and going forward and doing those things. And you've got Delo, who's not particularly valid at the moment. You've got options. What you haven't got, Scott, in midfield is this abundance of people who can play the 6 and can maybe do it to what you need. So what do you need, Scott? Defensive coverage. mobility,
anticipation,
ball movement, bravery, all that stuff. I think that some of those bits count for Scotty and count for Fred, but the real bits that they cannot do means that someone like Brentford will kill you in that part of the park, get the ball to Tony, and Tony will punish you, and you're done. So this is what I'm worried about. This is kind of, I don't want to do a show full of like negativity, but this is something that Ten Hag needs to sort out very, very quickly. Because I think we saw against Southampton, who have absolutely nothing, Scott. Bottom of the table for a reason. They are hot garbage. Sorry, Southampton fans, you are. That's why you are where you are. Even against 10-men Man United, they couldn't really turn the screw. They got Theo Walker at the top end of the pitch. Man United still couldn't really deal with it in midfield. Now, that worries me. And that's with all the kind of changes. We went to 4-4-1. It was horrible. It was sticky. It didn't work. But will it work with the 4-1-5, say, in the next game without Casemiro? I think the only way that works is with Lisandro there. If you put Lisandro in there, he is brave enough and technical enough to run the number 6 and then allow the 8 and the 10 to go and do their work. So it's a little bit of a plea to our manager because we don't believe he's going to do it, but I'm going to plea to Erik Ten Hag to push the Argentinian butcher forward a little bit in our team and maybe allow, I don't know, you could play Lindelof there on the left and Maguire, keep Rafa Varane in there. You could even bring Luke Shaw in, couldn't you? Luke Shaw come inside. Luke Shaw come inside if that's your preference as a left-sided player or left-footed player, and then play Malacia. You've got opportunities there to do good changes. But I think it's an essential change. And I think if you don't make that change, and I don't want to be proved right, I think you drop significant points in this 4-game run. Significant. Like you're saying, how many 7 that you think you win? I think you might win.
Well, you should be targeting at least 7 from these games.
If that's 12 points, yeah, I'm doing my maths, I think you'll drop half of them. I think you will, because I don't think that you're good enough at the number 6 to stop those kind of those teams that have got attrition in their veins. So like Everton, that they're going to come to Man United, and you know what Sean Dyche's Everton's going to do because it's the same as Sean Dyche's Burnley. Yeah, they're going to fight you. So if you can't fight in the number 6 role, you're probably going to lose territory. So United need to get that fixed very, very quickly. And I think Lisandro is the guy to do it.
I completely agree. Erik Ten Hag has, as you said, Rob, made no secret of the fact that he doesn't want to play in there. But we're at a case now of needs must. Totally. It is absolutely needs must because you have 3 games coming up in the league where United dealt with Newcastle at Wembley. I know that the atmosphere will be different at St. James's Park because they'll be at home. But even the way I know Newcastle won at the weekend, but even the way Newcastle have been playing recently, they're not really scoring too much. You need to ensure that you're secure enough not to go, and I would take a draw there at the moment. I would take a draw there. But you should be going there targeting to win. And then Brentford and Everton are 2 difficult. You saw Everton rock up to Old Trafford in the FA Cup and they gave United a bit of a scare. United did win. But Brentford already smashed United once this season. They're a team and they have a coach who knows how to win a game. Let's just say, he knows how to plan to win a game. And United don't have that security there without Casemiro. So they need to find a way, temporarily, I might add. We might never see this again. But we have said on this podcast over the last few weeks that you have Casemiro, fantastic. But he is 30, 31. And eventually, at some point soon, you will probably need a younger profile of player in that mold to come in and support for when Casemiro isn't playing, whether that's via injury or whether that's because of rest, or in this case, because he's missing 8 games in a Premier League season because of suspension, which it will be because he's missed 3 games for 1 red card, an accumulation of yellows, 1 game, and now another 4. Yeah. So they need to find a way to work this problem out because I think it's pretty obvious Scott McTominay isn't the answer there. No. There's suggestions already. What I've heard, Scott McTominay is available for other clubs to buy in the summer. Fred can't do it. Marcel Sabitzer could do it, maybe, but he's injured at the moment. That's another player on the list. Maybe that's how he'll go with it. But none of those options convince me quite as much as I think Lisandro Martinez will convince me in that position.
Yeah, look, I think the whole thing is that plan Bs and plan Cs are always as important as your plan A because nothing ever runs smoothly in football. You always get injuries, suspensions, you get bad form, you get problems, don't you? That's what football's about, and the art of management is about having options. Now, we know that Ten Hag is a lateral thinker, so he does, like think about Luke Shaw being a left back, playing centre back. That solved a problem, didn't it, for United in the short term? And that's something that none of us probably would have advocated at all. We'd have gone, Luke Shaw playing centre back like week after week. No, I don't want that. So he did that when he had to do it. So I think that needs must, as you say. And I think that you've got to kind of find solutions on the fly a little bit when you kind of say, well, I've got midfielders, but like say Ole Gunnar Solskjaer going back in the day, Ole would have just gone double pivot, stick my two in there, McFred, and then everything I build it around it. That's not great football. It's not a great way to kind of set your team up tactically. I think that Ten Hag is more expansive than that. So how do you make it work? Well, you definitely need a ball player in there at 6. That's really important. And if you haven't got Eriksen fit yet, and I think it's unfair to maybe rush him back. He's a guy who's had this injury. It was not a very nice injury. Getting him back early will be a huge upside for United, say for the last 5, 6, 7 games of the season. Really important. So don't blow that one up because he's going to be important. What can you do in the immediacy? And the fact that you've got senior centre-backs sat there, Scott, like I said, I'll talk about Maguire and talk about Lindelof. Players who know how to play games and know the big game situations. Yes, they're slow, but they know Varane. They know Shaw. Shaw can come inside. There is a kind of level of acumen already there that will allow Lisandro to go and play forward. The issue for me is the midfield. So if you don't have a solid number 6, it's going to expose Bruno at 8 because Bruno, I think, is going to carry on playing the 8. It will expose anyone who's playing the 10. So Jadon Sancho, I think, was exposed in this game playing the 10 because he just simply cannot do the midfield coverage. And you need someone to play the 6. I think what we saw in the game against Southampton is that tackle that Casemiro makes, he does not make that tackle if he's playing with Fred because Fred's on the coverage on that side. But he had no coverage. He had to come from the wrong angle, make a bad tackle and get sent off. So these are things that in the moment you can't fix. You can't tell Casemiro not to make that tackle because it's difficult. He's trying to do his job. But you need someone in there who's a dog of war. And that guy is Lisandro Martinez. He's the guy who can 4 games go in there and go, well, do you know what? I'm not a defensive midfielder. I am going to put my foot in. I'm going to put my foot on the ball. I'm going to do all the technical stuff that needs to be done. And I don't think he'd blink an eye, Scott. I think he'd go in defensive midfield and just go, this is who I am. This is my profile of player that I am. I'm a fighter. I go do the job in there. I'm going to show people that I'm a good defensive midfielder. And I always thought that when we signed him, that he might end up as a defensive midfielder at some point.
We said this at the start of the season before Casemiro signed. Because I remember saying, and I was wrong, that he's never going to drop Harry Maguire because he's the captain. Like, obviously, very ballsy. But when they signed Martinez, I thought, okay, well, I remember, I think you said that they would eventually, and they did. And now Maguire's very much second, third or fourth choice centre-back, maybe even 5th behind Luke Shaw and Victor Lindelof. But I always thought that Martinez had the raw attributes to go and fill this role because his anticipation is great. His positioning is great. He's good in the tackle. He's good at evading pressure. He's good at passing the ball and advancing it forward with his left foot. And he's tenacious enough to go and give United that bit of bite in there that they're lacking, or that they will be lacking. McTominay will give you some, but we've seen it. We've been watching Scott McTominay in the team for 5-6 years, and we know what he can and can't do. Yeah. So Ten Hag is in this position now of, I think United are still okay in the terms of top 4, but they've dropped more points over the next few weeks. They're getting dragged into that battle, and they cannot afford to do this and to drop points in these next few games if they can help it. So if you know McTominay is on the market and is going to be sold in the summer, if you know that Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof are on the market, if you know that Fred is better in the 8 or better pressing further up the field, why not? Why not try it?
I think needs must. I think you've got to try it. I didn't watch Ajax weekly under the Ten Hag era. I watched a hell of a lot of Ajax in the Eredivisie, and it just so happens that some of the 2 or 3 of the games that I saw were when Martinez was playing as the 6 or playing out of the defense, out of the back 4, about the back area, and I thought it was really good. So just that kind of small pocket of of seeing him made me think, well, he's got the attributes at least. And we know that anyway. Like, we see what he does. He's a progressive ball carrier. Go look at his statistics. They absolutely show that from the numbers, from the back line, he moves into the number 6 really comfortably. So pay him 10 yards forward. You can do that. So if he doesn't do that.
Better than Victor Lindelof in there, by the way.
Absolutely. If he doesn't do that, I think that it doesn't say that he doesn't trust Martinez to do that role. I think what it says, he doesn't trust Maguire. So we know that Maguire's slow. We know Lindelof's slow, and that is an issue. But I actually fancy Maguire against a Tony a little bit more, just because of the physicality and the reading of the game and staying goal side of him. It's really important. I think Maguire can do that. But then when I look at the midfield, if you get outworked by Brentford's, say, industrious midfield, then Tony's going to get better chances, isn't he? The ball's going to come in from wider areas. They're going to get through you. The ball's going to be through the channel, and they're going to beat you on that. So I think you have to look at it kind of from a more overtly tactical situation, as opposed to just individuals. I think you have to look at it and go, who can cover what in this moment? You've got 4 games here, Scott, to mitigate disaster. Because say you lose all those 4, like, I'm not being over the top, but say you do lose those 4, or say you lose 2 of them, that's a disaster, and you're then sucked into that battle of, are you going to be in the top 4? You shouldn't be in that situation just because of one player. But when Casemiro's out of the team, you're not as good. So you have to find answers to that. So I'd be all right if United get the press on, get their shape right, get a number 6 that just does all the functional stuff, and everyone else does their job, Scott. If everyone else does their jobs, you should be okay. You'll get points. You won't lose games. It'll be comfortable. But you saw against Southampton that you took Casemiro out, and the whole thing was lopsided. People didn't know what they were doing. Number 10s were not doing their jobs. Number 8s weren't doing their jobs. And you're putting Sancho up top. You have Bruno running around everywhere. It all becomes a huge mess. And you have to have some discipline. So this is what I think Ten Hag will need to work on the next few days. I think Cadiz is now going to be a little bit of a dress rehearsal. Yeah? It's got Betis, sorry, not Cadiz. But Betis is going to be a dress rehearsal for what we see in the Premier League. So he needs to kind of find a function that works there where you're defensively sound, but you can still do the counter press. Because Man United's counter press, going back to Liverpool and a little bit beyond, has become weaker. Whereas in weeks gone by, the counter press was brilliant. It was solid. It was working. There was no counter press against Southampton. That's against the Southampton team that are pretty weak through the core of their team.
Let us know what you think Erik ten Hag should do, because they are without Casemiro for 4 games in domestic competition. Fulham, Newcastle, and then Brentford and Everton over the next month or so.
Horrible games.
They're not nice.
No.
But these are going to be battles for 3 points each game. Well, obviously, the Fulham's in the cup. But United need to find a way. And I think if you can get through this period where you can take 10 points or 7 points out of 9 or something like that without Casemiro, and I think you're still in a pretty strong position going into the remaining few weeks of the season. But yes, we have been saying, if Casemiro is not there, you need to address that at some point. It doesn't seem to be on United's list of things to do in the summer at the moment. Is right back, central midfield, ball carrying midfielder and striker. If Casemiro's getting older, and that is something you have to be wary of his minutes. You have to rest him in order to get the best out of him, probably, because he can't play 66 games a season. So they need somebody else to fit this role. It's not McTominay. It's probably not Sabitzer. It's not Fred. It's not Christian Eriksen. You need to find a way, and you need to find a way temporarily now, but you need to address it longer term. And if Martinez can do it, that's a problem solved kind of for the future.
Yeah, totally. And it's one of those things of like, you have to see it, isn't it? A bit like Luke Shaw playing centre-back with something we didn't want to see. And then when you see it after 3 games, you go, that actually worked. So well done to the manager, well done to Luke Shaw. So I think that's the kind of challenge for Martinez. Long-term, you're correct. I think you need to look at the kind of Declan Rice market, because you need someone that can do 6, can do 8, do more box-to-box function, do the battling, do the leadership, do all that stuff. You also need ball carriers. But this is why the Frankie de Jong side of it, even though it would be great to have him, you have already kind of got Eriksen who can do that. You've got someone who can come in the team like a Zidane Iqbal next year and maybe develop a year on. You're going to get Hannibal back. You've got more ball players who can do that function. And we kind of got ball players, but like when you look at the players there for the defensive bit, it's worrying. And said like Scott McTominay, I do think that we know his weaknesses. And I think opponents know his weaknesses, and that's a problem. They know how to get inside his game and hurt him. So Scotty came on the other day, did what he had to do. Like we were saying, he didn't have a particularly bad game against Southampton, but his deficiencies really are illuminated in problem situations. So that's where you stand, I think, with Casemiro. I think as well with Casemiro, I'm not going to have a go at him for getting 7 matches as a ban or 8 matches. I think, as you said,
it was
before.
silly, though.
It's silly, but he's being tasked to do a lot defensively because he is, in inverted commas, good at it. But you can't just leave him to do it all. Yeah. So the number 8 and the number 10 have to drop in and help. And the shape has to be there to help that. So you can then counter press successfully. You can't just leave it to Casemiro. So I think that's a reason why he's like ended up with that red card, because of other things that are going on a football pitch. And Ten Hag has to solve that. So like even in Martinez plays, you can't just say to Martinez, you put your foot in and risk red cards. Like you can't do that. You have to get the ball down and play a system, and you have to have a more sure midfield. So that's the worry for me, is about, can United put midfields out there that compete with these 4 Premier League games with these teams? Because these teams are going to go in there to fight you with fire. And if you go in there just wanting to fight with fire and less technical ability, I think you might lose these games because other teams will outwork you. They'll battle you. And that's a worry. So let's see where we go, because I think these 4 games are massively important for United. If you want to go to the end of the season and be comfortable top 4, that's what I think what we need, Scott, isn't it? We'd like to be comfortably 3rd, pushing towards 2nd if those 2 are fighting each other for the title, and saying, right, do you know what? 4 games to go. We just need another win and we're in the top 4, comfortable. And our season ends with a bit of a damp squib. We don't want to be in some weird battle for 4th, do we, with Spurs and Newcastle and probably Liverpool. We don't want to be part of that story. That story is a horrible story. I'd rather it was comfortable and you did the work early.
Let's move on to a couple of players you want to talk about. Let's start with Antony, because honestly, I'm seeing comments about Matthew Helsted from the last video said, you'd be amazed at the moans and groans Antony gets at Old Trafford because he doesn't go down the line, and Weghorst because he doesn't score every game. Clueless at their function in the team. Weghorst, I understand he doesn't score goals, right? Don't want to talk about Weghorst. I think Antony gets so much unnecessary stick because he cost 80 million quid, and that's not his fault. I think the team are much better off with him in it because they're more balanced, and it's just because... Obviously, I'm not saying that he doesn't need to develop his right foot and he doesn't need to become a little bit more unpredictable and sometimes go down the right. But you know what he is. Erik Ten Hag knows what he is. He's bought him for a reason. And even like, I was in conversations the other day about what he said to Casemiro after he got sent off, trying to console him. He was getting the mick taken out of him for that. Just a kid can't win. You talk about Darwin Núñez adapting to his first season in the league and this kind of thing. He scored a few goals, but he's been pretty bad in others. Like he copped a bit of flack for the Bournemouth game the other day. Same thing, same age, same price, same profile of, player, like adapting to English game, this kind of thing. Not same types of players. They're obviously very different profiles, but it's just every game it seems to be something criticizing Antony, and it's just like, let him settle in. He's been here 6 months.
Yeah, I think some of the things I read about Antony and it is predominantly from Man United fans, so it's on us as a fan base. It really is. That some of the things kind of sent to me tweet wise and people tweeting about it. There's obviously a frustration. I understand those frustrations, but I think these are fans who don't look at maybe the bigger picture. I'm not trying to insult people, so please, again, don't get my comments saying that you're having a go at individual fans. I think some fans just want the kind of glamour and all the good stuff, and that's what turns them on. And the hard work and some of that kind of positional stuff that you can only really see in the stats sometimes. You kind of go, well, they're doing their marks there. They're getting those things right. I don't think some fans care about that stuff. I just don't think that they're turned on by it. Someone tweeted me as well that it was a quote from Quaresma, the player who used to play for Portugal, saying that pressing systems have ruined football because it means that players who are not particularly good suddenly are getting some kudos, and that's not fair. Well, I remember Quaresma when he was a player. He was hot garbage for years at times. He had great talent, yeah, but I wouldn't have picked him in my team. He was rubbish, and he did no work. So that was the problem. So I think you've got one swing to the other. people saying we don't want pressing systems. Well, go and tell Pep Guardiola. He's the one that invented all these things, and go and tell Jurgen Klopp. That's why all the managers do it. So I think when you look at Antony and what he brings to the functionality of Man United, there's undoubtedly that we are a better team when he plays on the right. And that is why the manager plays him. Yes, he hasn't got a right foot. Ryan Giggs didn't have a right foot, didn't use it ever, always wanted to come onto the left. Now, that's better when you're on the left side. People accept it more because you can go on the outside. Mahrez at Man City, same issue. Took him 2 years to learn to be able to go on the outside. So I think with Antony as a young player, I'm fine with that. Like, he will go on the outside eventually, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Going outside is not what it's about. It's about doing the team function. He's really good in the press. He's got good stats when it comes to reading the game in terms of interceptions. He gets United going in the right direction. He's kind of self-serving. So, like, he does his own game and he knows what his game is. He's not affected by other people. He just does what he's got to do. He does what the manager tells him. That's why he's picked. I've got no issue with that. He cost £80 million, Scott, plus. So what? I'm more bothered about, do United look better with that player in it? That's always the thing, my baseline, when we talk about individuals. And that's all I really care about.
Yes. I would just say, cut him some slack. It's the way, obviously, he's a flair player. He likes to carry himself with that air of confidence, and it doesn't always work for him. So maybe it does work against him.
Yeah, he kills that ball in the top corner the other day. Yeah, you know, like that's what he is. He wants to do that, but he can't only do that. Like, it can't be that your only trick in the game is come into your left, put it in the top corner. But don't be upset about that. Like, let the boy develop over time. Be happy that he's actually got that trick, because I'm telling you what, Darwin Núñez has got more problems at Liverpool and Cody Gakpo's got more problems at Liverpool than Antony has at Man United. That's the way I look at it in terms of affecting a team. So comparing these things are not always helpful, but I think that Ten Hag values Antony more than a lot of the fans do. And I think, again, that's probably more important than a lot of the hot air that goes around about him. Talking of Ten Hag valuing, what about Jadon? Yes, what about Jadon? That could be the title of the show, couldn't it? What about Jadon? I didn't want Jadon to start this game against Southampton. And the reason for that was that I thought with the last game against Betis and looking at the 3 games in 7 days, that it would have been better to give Jadon the game in Betis, where you're 4-1 up, to kind of have more freedom to run the game, to maybe play the 10 and do that. I didn't like it as a tactical choice in this match against Southampton, where you kind of have to mitigate the work of James Ward-Prowse in the middle. You need a little bit more kind of work rate in there. I think what we saw with Jadon is that before the Casemiro sending off, it wasn't really working for him. He kind of drifting through the game, looking a little bit, what I call to you, dead behind the eyes, just didn't really look switched on in a position. Bruno a couple of times was going up to him saying, Jadon, you've got to go do this. And Jadon was kind of doing a lot of, yes, captain. Yeah, I get it. And it wasn't happening. And then you have the Casemiro red card. And then after that, Jadon plays as a centre forward, which I was just completely shocked by. I just looked at that and I thought, why are you not bringing Sancho off and leaving Weghorst on and keeping the shape at least as a 4-4-1? Jadon Sancho, like with Antony, we can say that he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, yeah, because of the type of player he is. With Jadon, he's been at the club now a little while, double the length of, say, someone like Antony. And we need to see more, Scott. We just need to do. He had this period where he went to the Netherlands, got fit, got right, solved a few issues, came back, looked really healthy, looked really sprite, really ready. I think already that's gone. I really do. I watch him now and I think, this is the Jadon from earlier in the season where we were saying we probably can't pick him. I think the problem is that the manager wants to push him forward. The manager wants to give him responsibility and say, I believe in you. Now, that's the right way to do it. But you know what, Scott? You can't do it if it costs you points. So I think it cost us against Southampton. I think the fact that you were not solid in the middle of the park and didn't have the correct creativity from number 10 and didn't have the correct work rate in there, you should win this game 1-0, shouldn't you, if you get those things right? And you could see there were so many problems on the pitch against Southampton that emanated from me from that 10. And when Jadon was at the top end of the pitch as the 9, it was worse. Jadon just didn't know what he was doing. Just a lot of jogging, a lot of movement. Like, am I playing here? Am I supposed to drop deep to help the play? Am I supposed to run the last match? He just didn't know. So some of that's on the manager. But I do think that Jadon Sancho has to take responsibility for his own performances. If he's going to be the number 7 next year or an important part of this Man United team, he needs to prove it, and he needs to prove it very, very quickly. We can't get to the summer, Scott, and say, well, Jadon will be all right next year, because we've been doing that about Van der Beek for 2 years. Can't carry that on. I don't believe this manager will. I think this manager will challenge him, and if he doesn't quite make it, I don't know what you do with Jadon Sancho. He does not get in my best 11. Does he get in yours?
Not currently. We did have, Rob, a tweet from FPL Hafiz on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible Sancho could be sold? Ten Hag is trying to fit him in, but he's not taking his chances. Maybe use the money we get for him and reinvest in other positions. Could be a discussion on the show, perhaps. My take on this at the moment, I don't think that will happen this summer, but I definitely think it will be in Erik ten Hag's mind to address at some point down the line. I think there's other players in this team that we already know don't fit.
Yeah,
I think Sancho is in a position where we obviously know he's had time away, physical, mental issues. I don't think he's not completely clear at the moment. Everything is not right as rain. But I do think that Sancho is at least another year of persistence. And maybe you look at that if it's the same situation as it is currently in 24, because I think there's enough players in that squad at the moment that need to leave. I could probably name about 10 that you can raise money for. And at the end of the day, if you just make that call on Sancho now at 22 years old, when you've just spent 75 million on him, you're taking a hit on him. You're giving up on your investment. You sell him for, he's probably worth 40 at the moment if you are to sell him. And he moves sideways, and then he ends up making you look stupid when he plays somewhere else because he's really, really, really talented. So what's your take?
He's a talented boy, and I will never doubt that. I think he's an incredible talent, I really do. And I think that's why I was so happy with him coming to Manchester United. I think there's 2 or 3 ways of looking at this. I'll try and keep it as concise as possible. I think as you look at the lineup now and you look at what's been successful for Ten Hag since he came to the football club, Jadon Sancho was bought to play on the right and the left. That's what Jadon Sancho was bought to play in. I now think that he's behind Rashford on the left. He's behind Garnacho on the left. I think on the right-hand side, he's behind Antony, certainly on the right. And slowly but surely, he's going to be behind Pellistri, right? So this is it.
He's
now.
going on loan, isn't he?
Well,
I put Bruno there first, though.
So you've got 4 players. You've got 4 players there. And then you've got Bruno Fernandes, who's now playing in wide roles as well because he's not playing the 10. That's a problem for Jadon Sancho. Now, that cannot help him away from the pitch, but Ten Hag cannot make the whole team about Jadon Sancho or making Jadon Sancho feel happy or ready for games. Now, as it stands today, I disagree with the fact that Jadon could be up for sale. Could I change that position if Jadon doesn't show any kind of progress between now and the end of the season? I will be changing my position, Scott, because you can't carry people anymore. So look at the Paul Pogba situation. Let's use that as a comparable, because someone said to me about comparisons between the two. Is that Paul Pogba's incredible talent. Jadon Sancho, incredible talent. No doubt about it. Really, really good. Do they help you win? Well, Paul Pogba, I think, slowly but surely with his injury record, fell away from helping you to win. So when he went, and you go, okay. Same with Jadon. Jadon's young enough to develop, but Jadon Sancho cannot become a Carabao Cup footballer, Scott. He can't. Not on 300 grand a week or whatever he's on. Like, he's on big change. It's a lot of money. Yeah. So if you got that wage off the bill and brought in someone on 300 grand a week that helps you win every week, Frankie de Jong, someone like that, there's other players out there. You could be able to make your team better by sacrificing someone. Now, I don't want to sacrifice Jadon Sancho, but he's got to become a Manchester United footballer a lot quicker than maybe he thinks. So we're going to be 2 years into his cycle at Man United, and he's gone not just backwards, but I think a long way backwards. I don't want to debate the reasons for that. I want to debate the performances. And I think I want him to get chances, but not at the expense of winning football matches. I think if Jadon Sancho didn't play in that game against Southampton, I think you win it. And that's it sounds basic, that, but I think if you had Weghorst working the top end of the pitch, United would have made more creative chances. You just would have had more space. Sancho didn't do that. Sancho came off. He tried to change it. Garnacho comes on and Garnacho gets injured. It's a nightmare. There's problems there that you don't need. So I think for Jadon, I support him for now, absolutely. But it's the same as Donny van der Beek. You cannot just support someone forever if they're not turning the screw on their form and finding some way to become valid. He's become less valid, hasn't he, in this Manchester United front line this season? And we both said, didn't we, Scott? No, that's not going to happen. He's going to come in. He's going to be brilliant this year. We feel that. We believe in him. I think the manager wants that as well. We all want it. But if he can't do it, then eventually you have to say, cut our losses. If someone says, we'll give you 40, 50 million for him, that's a lot of money to go and find someone who can help you more. You can put that back in the team. So that's the challenge for Jadon. If he leaves Man United eventually at the end of the season, he's going to be taking a massive step down somewhere and a massive wage cut somewhere. He will be. He's got to prove that he's worth it. In the same way that Rashford had to. Last year, Rashford wasn't very good. Rashford this year, world class, best player in the world. Jadon Sancho at Dortmund, best young player in the world. We need that Jadon Sancho back very, very quickly.
Well, I certainly know that Dortmund would take him back in a heartbeat if they could, on loan or whatever. Maybe that is another option.
But we don't want to play that game, Scott.
But let's not play that game. Exactly.
We want our players to be valid and say that they're worthy of their shirt. You know what I mean? And Jadon at the moment, for whatever issues there are, physically he doesn't look right to me still. He still doesn't look in top condition. He's still huffing and puffing in matches. And I kind of think to myself, should be over that now. Like, you've had the training, so you should be able to run at least and give that effort side of the game. I know it's not a big part of his natural game, but if you're not doing it with the ball on the deck, do it at least in the press.
Let's talk about some injury situations before we wrap up. Do a little bit on transfers at the end as well. Antony Martial and Christian Eriksen. Martial's back in training, isn't he?
Yes.
Don't risk him yet. Give him the rest of the week off. not off, but don't include him in matches for me. Get him ready to come back at the start of the resumption of the league and then reintegrate him. Make sure he doesn't get bloody injured again.
Yes, and that's where having this lead in the second leg in the Europa League, I think, is a big benefit. Not just the fact that you hope to go through because you've got the lead, but it means that you might not have to make some of the changes that you might have felt enforced to do with one thing or another. Like, you could still play Casemiro in this game, still keep some of the shape, maybe even give Jadon another chance to kind of go do that opportunity, as I'd rather that he'd played in that game against Betis in the second leg. But yeah, I think when you look at Antony Martial, there's a bigger debate there about what you do with him next season now and whether you do keep him. And this run towards the end of the season now will dictate that, because I think the manager needs to see him stay fit and see he can maintain that, but also be useful, because he's missed 40-odd games this year in all competitions. And just imagine if you'd had a fit number 9 or a fit Antony Martial in that period. I think you would be title contenders. I think you would be in that top 2 or 3 conversation a lot more solid than you are at the moment. You would not have lost those games that you lost earlier in the season because you just had more functionality at the 9. Yes, I agree with you. I think you need to keep him for this 4-game run, and I hope that he can give you minutes because he can give you value there. And it means that, Scott, as well, that if you're trying to look at the defensive function a little bit more, that if you can play in that 4 games, Antony at the 9 and Weghorst as a 10, because you really don't want Bruno playing the 10 for whatever reason, then you can do that. It's not particularly exciting, but I think Man United need to aim to have 4 clean sheets in those games, first of all, and then go and win them on the counterpunch. And you can do that comfortably with the talent that you've got and the pace that you've got. So that's what I want to see. I don't want to see Rashi brought into the middle because he's not as good as in the middle. Rashi's better on the left. Antony's still your best option on the right, but now you're losing Garnacho. That's a huge blow to Man United. The potential that he might be out for even months rather than weeks and days. So that is a problem, and we need to see what happens there with his latest scan. But you've got a few tricky situations now that you need to navigate, don't you? So I think Antony Martial is one of them. You need him in those league games. They are so much more important than the Europa League.
Yeah, Christian Eriksen we've already talked about as well. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Maybe not straight away after.
But I wouldn't rush him.
Break, but yeah,
don't rush him.
Don't rush him. But we've talked about the midfield already needing ball players in there, and Christian Eriksen, they're missing him, aren't they? I really think so.
Isn't it funny? You find that value of a player more when they don't play. Like, that's when you really find the value of individuals in your team. It's not when they actually come in and play well and you go, oh, he might be good for that because he's come in and done well. No, it's actually the other way around. When a player's out for an extended period of time, you miss them. And I'm telling you this now, Scott, if Garnacho is out, say towards the end of the season, and out for a big run of games, we're going to miss him. And we're going to be saying that when he comes back, thank God Garnacho's back, because we need someone who can run on that outside and actually help on that left-hand side and give Rashi a bit of a break. So I think that that's a huge blow for United. But I think with Eriksen coming back, the minute he's fit and match ready, I think he's just an automatic starter now. Like in that midfield, there's so many bits in that midfield that's still dysfunctional. The one bit that isn't dysfunctional is Christian Eriksen's feet, because he's an artist with that ball at his feet. And you do need that kind of ball metrics in there, someone who can move it along and just do all the simple stuff without blinking.
Yeah, we'll hope to see him back soon. I'm just digging through some comments to see if anyone has said, no, we shouldn't sign Harry Kane, because that's how I want to finish the show today. I'm seeing every time I tweet, make Harry Kane happen. And Harry Kane's got to make this happen, by the way, if he wants it to happen, which we're not sure of yet. But United fan base seems to be quite... Maybe it's the Twitter fan base. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it seems to... A lot of the noise seems to be, no, Victor Osimhen's the one. Victor Osimhen's the one. I've seen other strikers come from Italy and fail to adjust to the Premier League, and it doesn't always work. And I think the latest reports are, we had some on Monday about United not wanting to deal with Daniel Levy, and they need a striker in as soon as possible in the summer, and Daniel Levy's going to drag it out. That's all well and good. That is the case. But what I will say is, if Harry Kane wants to stay in the league, Harry Kane's got some decisions to make, right? If he wants to stay in the Premier League, which we understand that he does, he wants to stay and break that Premier League all-time goal-scoring record, move into Germany. Real Madrid getting the picture might be a little bit different. I don't know. But if he wants to give it a real crack at trophies, whether Tottenham get top four or not, he has to kick up a stink. He's got 12 months left on his contract. He has to be completely adamant that he's not going to sign a new one and dangle the threat of, I'll stay here for another year and I'll go and join one of these English rivals anyway, Mr. Levy, and you'll get no money for me. That's how it's got to play, and that will help United's case.
Completely. And look, Daniel Levy has stung Manchester United plenty of times in terms of value. Like, we know this. So it's kind of like there is history there. And we also know that Tottenham Hotspur at this point of the season will not want to be entering into anything that looks like their superstar captain leaving the football club. So they've put that out there through their contacts. We kind of know this. We know how the game works, and this is how it goes, isn't it? It's that you get to a point. Kind of, again, there is similarities between Van Persie and Arsenal in the sense. I remember Van Persie standing in front of a camera, kind of saying, I'm going nowhere, smirk on his face, and then of course left the football club. It happens all the time, especially with the big players, especially with captains as well when they're leaving. So leadership is a thing. I think when you look at Harry Kane, you look at Manchester United fans, you look at Victor Osimhen. Victor Osimhen, people keep saying to me, "Oh, he's your 10-year option." Now, I don't know why people say this, because it doesn't exist in football anymore. There is no such thing as your 10-year option. People going, but Haaland is City's 10-year option. No, he isn't. He's going to be at Real Madrid.
Jadon Sancho was Man United's 10-year option.
Jadon Sancho was our 10-year option, and he's not even in the team. I called him a Carabao Cup footballer a minute ago. So there are always those problems that involve lateral thinking that I just don't know if the Twitterverse does that. Twitter is about reaction and about wants and likes. And if I've got a chocolate bar, I want to shove it in my mouth because yum, 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 yum. That's all I want. Just give me the sugar. I think that's kind of where it is. I think with Harry Kane, he's always kind of been a deeply unpopular footballer with certain fan bases. So, like, let's talk about this. Arsenal fans hate Harry Kane. Why do they hate Harry Kane? We know why they hate Harry Kane. We know. We don't need to talk about it. They would never want to see Harry Kane do anything. It's like our Steven Gerrard, isn't it? That's what it is. That's how we felt about Stevie G. I think when you look forward to it and you look about what United are going to do in the marketplace, there's still options for them. As I said, we need to see what happens with Antony Martial. Osimhen is an easy fix, but I'm already seeing journalists say, well, it's a kind of similar deal in price. No, it isn't. Victor Osimhen's going to cost about double the amount of Harry Kane, and wages might even be more than Harry Kane.
People don't seem to realise that Aurelio De Laurentiis, read up about him. Honestly, read up about him.
But I think the thing is the whole thing with Osimhen is that he is kind of at the height of his powers in terms of value. So you're going to have to pay 150. You're going to have to pay 150. I don't care if United pay 150 or not. I don't care about what our owners pay for footballers. I care about who you get. So I would like Osimhen. We're not going to complain about that. But I think when you look at Harry Kane, he's more gettable. So what happens with Harry Kane? Let's end the show on this. Harry Kane has got 4 options, and 2 of them are the more likely ones. Now, people say about him going abroad, Bayern Munich, all of that. He's not going anywhere. He wants the Premier League goal-scoring record. He wants to be the greatest goal scorer of all time. He said that privately. He said that kind of openly. So he's got to stay in the Premier League. So he could stay at Spurs. That's an option. But then you look at the other main four, Man United, Newcastle, and I'm going to put in there Liverpool and City. And people might go, well, that's mad. Like, why would you do that? Let's look at it just as a kind of more focused point. Manchester City's attack is not working, right? They've got the best young striker in the world who's going to carry on playing as the 9. You've got to find out something going on around him. You've got to make it work. It's not working with De Bruyne. It isn't. De Bruyne's at the end of his life cycle as a player. You might play him deeper in years to come because he is, though. He is. And even, did you see
I don't disagree. It's just a controversial statement.
Okay, it's controversial, but it's not controversial when the manager is coming out, Pep Guardiola came out yesterday, and when it's not working. He said it. He said, I need Haaland to do more. I need De Bruyne to do more. So if they don't do more, it doesn't work, Scott. They're going to get to the end of the season, especially if they don't win the title, and they're going to be looking for a primary forward that can affect you in the middle. I think Harry Kane is perfect for that. Harry Kane plays a 10, and you could play a kind of 4-4-1-1 and keep your shape and still have 2 amazing forwards on the pitch and win football matches with a Julian Alvarez backing them both up. So that's one option. Liverpool's not working. It's not working. Darwin Núñez has done okay. Gakpo's done okay. Jota's come back in. I think he's potentially the answer. I think Salah's out the door at the end of the season. I really do. They're going to be looking for a primary forward. Harry Kane, again, perfect for that. Bring him in. He's one of our own. You could see it, Klopp putting him front and centre. He's the now and the main player. Newcastle, all the money in the world. They could tempt the Harry Kane with that. But let's look at Man United. Man United still need that leader in there. Man United still need that goal scorer. Man United still need a number 9. If you don't get Victor Osimhen and you don't get one of those young forwards, a Sesko or a Kudus or someone like that, I think you've got to still look to the experience side of the market. That's Harry Kane, available for 80 to 90 million on maybe £300,000 to £400,000 a week. That is a bargain for someone who can get you 20 goals with his eyes closed every year in the Premier League. That's what you want, because then if you've got Marcus Rashford on the left and Antony on the right and Bruno at 10 and a Sancho to come in and then a guy up top who just picks himself every week as a number 9 and stays fit, because that's the other side of it, your title contenders. Like that, all over. We said it last week, we'll say it again. So this is why the manager would like a Harry Kane. We know this from our own contacts. It means that Tottenham are going to push back against that because they don't want to see their captain go to Man United. But we have taken players off Tottenham for many, many years. Michael Carrick, Dimitar Berbatov. We've always gone back to Spurs and been able to pick players that we like to make us better. I think Harry Kane is the ultimate upgrade at number 9. And yes, I'd take Osimhen tomorrow, but my God, I would take Harry Kane as well.
I would say Dusan Vlahovic is. Don't write that one off.
No.
Kudus as well from Ajax is, again, don't write that one off. But Kudus, you see the stick Antony's getting. Mohamed Kudus is 21,
and that's the problem.
You know,
that's
Victor
what I'm
Osimhen's
saying.
23.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You've got to look at the experience side of the market, because you did that with Casemiro and it worked, right? It's worked for this short window that he's been at the club, and you hope it works for maybe another 2 or 3 years, that you get that real value out of Casemiro, 350 grand a week, £60 million. It's worked. Well done, Man United. Big box ticked. But if you go buy young forward, a Sesko or someone like that, a Kudus, and it doesn't work, people are going to say after 6 months, sell him. Like we're talking about some of our players. People saying, oh, Antony should be sold at the end of the season. Why? Are you mad? Like, you paid 90 million for him. You're not going to get anything like that, are you? You're not going to get an upgrade in your system. You're going to get a downgrade. So you've got to be patient. But I think with Harry Kane, you could say on day one, all right, Harry, your job is to make this team win. And can you do that? And I think, a little bit like Van Persie, Harry Kane's got that in him. People say he's a choker. That's what Arsenal fans say. Harry, who's our producer, will call Harry Kane a choker every day of the week. I disagree with that. I think that's more to do with Spurs being a choker football club. But I think Harry Kane could come to Man United and not just be significant. I think he could be the man. He could be the man. He'd come in and make everyone else better straight away and help Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford's carrying this team in terms of goals and stuff this season, isn't he? You need someone that helps Marcus put the ball in the back of the net, because you've not got a lot else in other positions that do that regularly, even though you are better than you were 12 months ago. The next step is to be better again in another 6 to 12 months. Harry Kane for 80, 90 million, my God. Bite that hand off, take it and be happy with it. There's a lot of Man United fans are not happy with it, but they're not happy really with a lot of things most of the time.
Sorry, this is turning into a Harry Game propaganda machine. But yeah,
he won't be on the thumbnail. Put it that way.
That's it for today's show. We've gone for an hour again. You can subscribe to our show wherever you get your pods, on Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes. Watch us on YouTube twice a week, Tuesdays, Fridays. Come and check us out. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment for us. We're getting more of those in. Please leave them and continue to leave them. We do read them. Like the video, join the community with us, and follow us on Twitter too. I've just tweeted, Rob, campaign for Lisandro Martinez to start a DM in Casemiro suspension. So please get across there and let us know if you agree or disagree. @_ Scott Saunders, @_ Rob _B, and @PromiseAndMU for the show. We'll be back on Friday to hopefully not be talking about Man United crashing out of the Europa League. And we'll look ahead to the Fulham game. Thanks everyone for listening and for watching, and we'll see you soon.